Hey guys, Dave again, welcome back to the channel. So today I thought we'd talk about sort of what I'm looking at investing in. I think I might have found a really cool opportunity, wanted to share it with you guys. This is by no means financial advice, I'm just a YouTube guy, but this is pretty exciting. I think it's pretty neat, so I want you guys to check it out, maybe have a chance to get in on it. So for the 12 of you that watched my Bitcoin video, thank you. For those that didn't, little spoiler alert, I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin. I do go into the reasons why in there. But in that video, I definitely say that I'm a fan of the blockchain technology. And we're going to elaborate sort of on where that's making a difference in the world, some industries that's impacting, and who, in my opinion, the major player in that field is going to be and currently is already. So if you don't want to go through all that, you can fast forward to the end of the video. I'll give you the specific company at the end, and then you can go research for yourself if you want to bypass all this. But so basically, if we go ahead and we take a look at blockchain patent filings for 2020, there were quite a few. There's a couple big names that really jump out there. And the thing that's really surprising is it's a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are filing for blockchain patents. It's not your typical upstart technology companies. It's huge, well-established companies. So if we take a look, Bank of America jumps out at us first with right around 50 patents. And I mean, they're gobbling up a lot of the financial-based blockchain patents as it is. Next, we have IBM coming in at 240 patents. So quite a sizable jump there already, and they're kind of applying it across the board. And then same with Alibaba, but Alibaba's out in front, like they 10x'd what IBM did in 2020, and they currently have a total of 1,505 patents out there. We'll get into some of Alibaba later in a minute, but so why are all these huge companies investing in blockchain? And I mean, when I say huge companies, beyond Bank of America, IBM, Alibaba, Walmart's involved, you know, I mean, true mega players. If you look at a lot of the accounting firms, KPMG, Ernst & Young, for example, they're involved. Like everybody and their brother that's a big player is getting involved in blockchain. Blockchain's going to really change the way that you do life. And we're going to get into some of those industries and scenarios where you're going to see that impact. It's already kind of happening. It's still early, you might not feel it, and it's, you know, by the time it gets to the general public, it's usually well adopted, vetted, and all that kind of stuff. We're in that very, very early stage where there's still a chance to make a little bit of money. There's still a little bit to get out ahead of the curve. There's still some opportunities there. So let's take a look at some of the industries here. And there's 58 industries, and I'll put them up here in this chart so that you guys can see. And we'll go ahead and we'll talk through sort of some of them. I'll let you guys go ahead, and I'll put a link to a website down in the description where you can run through some of these and see the individual pieces that are impacting if there's a particular industry that you're interested in. But let's talk about a few at a super high level and get going there. So the first one, let's go with the low-hanging fruit, banking. Naturally, everybody knows about Bitcoin and what it's doing, you know, as far as investing goes and changing digital currency and the conversation it's having around FedCoin. Now that's part of the reason why I don't like blockchain. I highly advise you go, Bitcoin. Highly advise you go watch my Bitcoin video on why I don't think you should invest in Bitcoin, but you should get in on blockchain. So in looking at that, where's blockchain impacting banking? So one of the big segments that it's really impacting there is cross-border transactions. So in 2019, cross-border transactions generated $224 billion for banks. So there's a company out there called Ripple. They've partnered with some major, you know, third-party institutions, think Western Union, to sort of disrupt the way that cross-border transactions are done. It gets rid of the need for third-party verification. It's an exponentially faster process than what's currently in place. So it's faster, it's cheaper, and there's less overhead. To think that this isn't going to get adopted would be silly. It's definitely going to come. The only way it doesn't is if it gets regulated out now. I have no way of forecasting that. But from a disruption, from a deflationary, from a cost perspective, the ton of opportunity here, and it's already being seized on by some major companies like Western Union partnering with company Ripple. So the next section, let's talk about that one. So wills and inheritance. So anybody that's been through that process, first, I'm sorry you had to go through it. Second, I'm sorry for your loss. But third, you know how challenging it is. So, and we'll dumb it down and we'll make it really simple, just from verifying whether or not the will is authentic. You know what I mean? How many times have you heard about fake wills and people made them up just to try to get some of the inheritance, and then you're in these huge court battles and whatnot? Blockchain will verify that the will is authentic. So there won't be any more of that, is this grandpop's will or Uncle Billy's will or any of that kind of stuff. It is or it isn't, and we'll be able to determine that right quick. So there's already a Japanese company called, and I'm gonna butcher this name, Zwei ZWEI Space. So they're currently developing a self-executing will system that automatically distributes the assets as soon as there's confirmation of a trustee being deceased. So with a system like that, you don't need executors and you don't need attorneys. All of it gets done automatically. I mean, here's another example of deflation, eliminating jobs, speeding it up, making it cheaper, and we're only in number 2. So, and there's a company that is involved in it. So out of these 58, there's a company that's involved in 13 of these, and I'm going to talk about it at the end. So the next section I want to sort of highlight and go over is accounting. I think accounting's ripe for some disruption. You know, it's riddled with a lot of human error. It's really cumbersome. There's a lot of regulation in there. Automating that, taking that human component out of it, that piece out of it. So, I mean, it's no secret that all that information they have to deal with is a nightmare. Keeping track of it all is a nightmare. Organizing it all is a nightmare. So if we use blockchain, we can quickly authenticate all this information, organize it, and recall it. So each one's individually stamped. We know where it's at. We don't really have to worry about it. It's not all this paper moving around jargon like we did back in the 80s. So the big 4 accounting firms recognize this, and they're already out ahead of this. They're already working on this. So to give you some examples, KPMG has invested in programs and projects to research the shared information about blockchain. PwC's created an auditing service for cryptocurrency assets. And then Deloitte has even developed a blockchain-based software. And Ernst & Young uses blockchain to analyze and help auditors accurately vet digital assets. So they're all investing in it in some form or fashion. They're seeing the benefits. You know, I think once you start to couple these guys with AI, you know, if you think like IBM's Watson or whatnot, you know, AI coupled with blockchain, the AI can automatically grab the documents, vet them, authenticate them. You know, I don't know that I'd want to be going to school for accounting. I think that a lot like legal, you know, being a paralegal and doing tons of research, AI, blockchain, going to eliminate a lot of that. You know, those billable hours are going to be done instantly. You're not going to have to sit around and really thumb through books and go through all that. It's going to be easily recallable. I think we're going to see the same thing in accounting. And I think blockchain's starting to be that disruptor. And then once they get AI ironed out a little bit, really look for disruption in that scenario. The next industry I want to talk about is automobiles. So, and the big place where blockchain really comes in automobiles are going to be auto parts. So, you know, blockchain can really be used to track auto parts, where they go, who they went to. They can be used to weed out counterfeits. So how many times do you hear about counterfeit parts, junk, all that kind of stuff? All that's going to be eliminated. There's also some major implications with blockchain. And because you can authenticate those parts, know where they went to and who currently owns them, it helps exponentially with recalls. So you can target that information instead of these blank giant recalls. If you have, you know, a Chevy truck made in, you know, 2009, this model, bring it in for a recall. They can target the actual individual people with the trucks that had those parts in it. I didn't use Chevy by mistake there. That was on purpose. But yeah, so I mean, if you think about it, in the first half of 2020, there were 13 million recalls. So just in the first half of 2020, there were 13 million. So being able to target that, get that message out, and get those cars in and serviced really quick is just a huge win. The other thing that blockchain is really going to be able to help with, especially if we know the parts and we can track them and verify them, we're going to know about auto thefts. And this will allow us to extend across the border as well. So we'll be able to verify those parts and whatnot. So if your car gets stolen and trucked across the border, we'll know where it is because we'll be able to see it when parts pop up within the system. So as we see those, we can track down, get your car back, or get something, or at least know what happened. But we'll have that verification. And blockchain's the first piece to allow us to be able to do that. And there's actually a consortium that's working on this, the Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative. So it includes Ford, BMW, Honda, and GM. And they're all working on this particular vehicle tracking initiative. They call it VID, Vehicle Identity Standard. So it basically provides birth certificates to vehicles. It traces maintenance history, vehicle registration, and it will do the cross-border piece that we just talked about. So again, more disruption there in the auto industry in a couple of different ways, just out of blockchain. So I want to talk about two more. I'm trying to be as quick as possible, not dive too deep to make this too boring. So the next one's real estate. So anybody that's done real estate knows how awful that is. Title work, always last minute scrambling, coming in, bunch of problems. And a lot of that stems from, records are really hard to trace down. They're everywhere. They're paper, they're digital, they're property deeds, liens. All of that is a mess. Blockchain will allow us to organize that. A lot like we talked about in accounting, we'll be able to verify those documents, recall them quickly, have access to them any second of the day. So I really think it'll speed up that title process. I really think, and this wasn't in my research, this is just me being hypothetical. So if you look at somebody like Zillow that does Zillow offers, they're going to be able to make you an offer right there on the spot for your house. They'll have all the historical data out of the blockchain. You'll be able to click a button and sell your house in like 10 minutes. Like, it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be really fast. So, I don't know that I'd want to be a real estate agent any more than I'd want to be an accountant right now. I think those industries are really, really coming for disruption. Same with title companies. Does it happen next year? No. But is it in the near future? Absolutely. They're going to simplify these processes, these cumbersome paper-based transactional processes. You're going to see a lot of that get fixed with blockchain. So there's already a company out there called Propy, P-R-O-P-Y, and it's seeking to offer secure home buying through a blockchain-based smart contract platform. So basically, all your documents are signed and securely stored online, while deeds and other contracts are recorded using blockchain technology instead of paper. So they securely store all that stuff, disseminate it to the right people. It's exactly the scenario that I just gave you with, let's say, Zillow or Redfin, making you that offer, and you quickly are executing it. Propy's to me, it seems like one of those companies that gets acquired by a Zillow or a Redfin, so they can integrate that technology into their company. So the last category I want to talk about, and you've probably heard about some of this in the news. This is by far and away probably the fastest one out there running, at least that's made it to the general population. So it's the art world, and we'll call it the art world, and I think you could go visual art and audio art. Just last week, Kings of Leon released the first NFT album in history. We've seen, I think the dude's name is Babel. I'm trying to make sure I get that right. But basically, he sold a piece of art for $60 million, NFT. So NFT is a non-fungible token. So basically what non-fungible means is you have the only copy. So if we look at Bitcoin, you can trade one Bitcoin for another Bitcoin. You still have a Bitcoin. You don't have the original Bitcoin, and that's fine. That's just the way they transact. Non-fungible means you have, let's take it, compare it to like a baseball card. So you have serial number 1 and it's signed. You have the only one of that baseball card, and it's yours and it's trackable to you. That's how non-fungible works. So when you get one of these digital copies, you have that serial number. Basically, the NFT token serves as your signature. That's yours, and we can track it across. Now, to me, trading digital art seems a little silly. You're trading videos. You know, you or I could still go out and download and have the same video on our desktop if we wanted with just a few clicks. Do we have an authenticated one? No, but it's not like you have the Mona Lisa or whatever, but I feel like the Mona Lisa versus a copy of the Mona Lisa is drastically different than a digital piece of work. But when they're trading for $60 million, maybe I'm wrong, but that's an example of where this is starting to come into play. Some really rich people are getting behind it. It's making an impact in the art world. Christie's auction house, for example, are auctioning these off. So that's a something to be said, and that's a real today implementation of blockchain. So okay, so now that I've been long-winded and I've explained a bunch of different industries that are being disrupted, and there are more, go check them out. I highly encourage. There was one company that really kept popping up when I looked at who's doing what in this. And there was one company that a lot of these guys kept pairing with, you know, whether it was Home Depot on the retail side, pairing with these guys. And that company is IBM. So they were number 2 on our patent list. You know, I'm not a big IBM fan. I think more than once they've given away early leader position. I'm hoping this isn't more of the same. You know, if we look back in the 80s and 90s, ThinkPads were the rage. They had an early mover position there. Then if we look at Watson and all that could have been, you know, back when Ken Jennings and Google and Jeopardy and all those guys were taking on Watson on Jeopardy. Thought that was really cool, and it never really manifested itself into what I think it could have been. So while I do have some concerns about IBM's ability to execute long-term, they're definitely in a highly early mover status. They've partnered with a ton of companies to get to that early mover status. They have a lot of the patents already, so they're laying the groundwork to be instrumental in blockchain. So I highly encourage you to go out and look at them. So out of that 58 industries, 13 of them, IBM was specifically mentioned in the article. I'll put the link in below. You can see all the partnerships that are going on. I'm not going to make this video an hour long and dig into all of those and dive through them all. You can read them pretty quick. But IBM is really the market leader, and I think blockchain's really going to disrupt a lot of the stuff. You know, I only gave you a few high-level examples here, and I moved through them quickly. Encourage you to read the article. Take a look at it. The one that I'll provide really highlights these industries and outlines a lot of that. This is coming to your life. This is going to change a lot of stuff. This will impact jobs. I really, you know, if you're a regular salary employee, I encourage you to go look at these industries and how they're being disrupted, so that you can either get ahead of the curve and make yourself instrumental in the company that you work for, or see the signs and realize if your job's in jeopardy. You know, technology is a huge deflationary force. It ends a lot of jobs. Be prepared, get ahead of this. You know, do your research on IBM. I definitely encourage you to take a look at it. Make your own decision on whether or not you want to invest in it. It's something I'm heavily getting to the point where I'm ready to pull the trigger on. Bank of America is another one. I think, you know, if you don't have the money to get in on IBM, it's about a 5-to-1 price increase. Bank of America to IBM. You could still sort of be in the blockchain game with Bank of America, but I think IBM is your bigger player. I think it's your bigger foundational. You know, those patents are going to pay off in the long run. There's a lot of other companies that are going to leverage that technology. They're going to get paid a lot of royalties on this. I think it's going to be a great revenue stream for IBM. Yeah, so that's it. So that's my recommendation. IBM, purely on the blockchain play, if you want to get in on that. I think it's the better long-term play than Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin gets regulated out. Go watch the Bitcoin video. But IBM's your play. That's my recommendation. I'm looking at it heavily. I'm looking for a dip. As soon as it pulls back, I'm going to pull the trigger. Hope that helped. Hope that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of you guys will disagree with me. Love to hear the comments. Love to hear some other perspectives. But read the material first, check it out, and then absolutely drop something in the comments. Love hearing from you guys. I'll talk to you soon.